Hey there, guys, it's Rachel. So I've been gone a little bit the last couple of weeks. School has been a bit crazy. And so this video is basically going to be me catching up on some of the YouTube Pagan Challenge prompts. I skipped number 11 and 12 because, quite honestly, I don't have enough to say about consciousness, the consciousness of the universe, and like other realms, dimensions. That gets a little bit too I don't know, like new agey and not my like shtick. So I'm skipping over them, and other posts will just I just knocked a water bottle over. Sorry. Will basically take their place. So today I'm going to cover basically prompt 13 through 16 and just get caught up on some of those prompts. Make it so that way I can do as many of them as possible. The next few weeks here are going to be crazy, crazy, crazy again. I have 2 really big research papers plus a couple of other, smaller things to do before the semester ends. And I graduate in 44 days. So, crazy. So, without further ado. So, number 13 for the YouTube Pagan Challenge was outdoor versus indoor rituals. Obviously, because I live in Michigan and weather is unpredictable and sometimes less than favorable, I have plenty of experience doing both indoor and outdoor rituals. Actually, my in-bulk ritual that I had been planning this year, I had been hoping, because we had had some really nice weather at the beginning of February there, to do that outside. And then, of course, it snowed like crazy, like it is now. Like, happy almost spring equinox, have a snowstorm. So I find that I prefer doing rituals outside. It's a lot more private. Usually I have always been in situations where I'm living with other people who aren't necessarily sharing the same religious interests and beliefs and that sort of a thing as I am. And so going outside and getting away from all of that is usually more of like a private thing. I can be a little bit more open and expressive and not keeping my voice down and worrying about, is my dad going to be upset about these candles and incense burning in the house, and little things like that. So I prefer outdoor rituals. I really do. I think that the connection there, not only because I'm literally out in nature, but because I'm a bit more genuinely devoted to the ritual, because I'm not worried about interruptions and having to work around limitations that come with doing my rituals inside in the places that I've been living in. That said, I live in an environment where sometimes it is completely necessary that if I still want to do a ritual on a specific day, I have to do it inside, and that's just, the way that it is. Beyond that, I don't have a whole lot else to share in that respect. So the next question, 14, for this challenge was, do you use or would you try psychoactive drugs, hallucinogens, etc. for spiritual purposes? Quite simply, no. I'm not going to, poo-poo on anyone who does. That is completely up to you and whatever. I just don't personally feel like I would ever do that. I'm too much of a control freak, I have to be in control of my own being and experience, I guess. I have to be consciously, involved in whatever it is I'm doing. And so using those sort of substances, I guess, would just put me out of that element and be really uncomfortable for me. Not only that, a lot of them are illegal, and I'm one of those really paranoid people where it's oh no, I don't want to get, in trouble for using them. It's all sorts of reasons. So if you've used them, cool. If not, also cool. I'm not going to, talk down about them or anything like that. I just personally would never use them. Number 15 for the YouTube Pagan Challenge was, do you have a code of ethics? My overarching code of ethics, I guess, is just don't be an asshole. You know, and that idea that if you put negative, crappy energy out in the universe, it's going to come back to bite you in the butt. So don't be a jerk. But I have in the past worked on developing sort of like a code of virtues, that sort of a thing. And it was inspired a lot by, some of the old like chivalric codes and the ideas in Celtic and Norse society about, being a warrior and fighting for what's right and being hospitable and being, skilled in those sort of storytelling and like speech arts, kind of a thing like that. There's a blog post floating around somewhere about it. I had developed at one point in time kind of like a virtues of the hunt, and it was the series of like, I think there were 13 of them. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've seriously tried like applying them in like a strict sense to my practice, if only because I've been busy and going through lots of transitional points in my life. But what they essentially were all about was connecting with nature, being a responsible person and standing up for, other people and for yourself, being respectful, being a good host to other people, to whatever spirits you might be working with when you're doing a ritual, that kind of a thing. But also being a good guest and like, trying to like keep in mind that sort of reciprocity and like giving as well as taking graciously, that sort of a thing. And then of course, inspiration and eloquence and storytelling, that sort of, artistic ability that I think is really something to be celebrated and I think is honorable. So if you all are interested in that, I can do an entire video on that once I've worked it all out again to like fit better what it is I'm thinking now. But that's basically my code of ethics, as it were. Just don't be an asshole to people, don't break laws, those sorts of things. Nothing, spectacularly rigid. And finally, number 16 was, what other religions influence you or appeal to you? So obviously I identify as a druid, and so starting out my path, I started with Wicca, and so that has definitely influenced a lot of my own personal journey, how I look at ritual, some of the interests I have in like spell work and that sort of a thing. It's very, part of my spiritual path, and I think that it'll always kind of hold like a little bit of like that special place in my heart, kind of a deal, just by virtue of that's how I started on this journey. Recently, I've become really interested in Irish Catholicism, and not necessarily in like I'm going to convert to Irish Catholicism kind of a thing, but a lot of what we know about like Celtic mythology, the way these people lived, some of these like, very Celtic traditional concepts of like, closeness with nature and the importance of poetry and music and those sorts of things come from the writings of Irish Catholic monks. And I find that there are differences, and especially me studying medieval history, between the Irish Catholic Church and the Roman Catholic Church. And so that, and having, familial ancestry, being Irish and Catholic, it's become very interesting to me. And there are a lot of like parallels and overlaps, and Catholicism is actually really ritualistic when you look at it and all these sorts of things. So that's something that has become infinitely fascinating to me, is just Irish Catholicism as another aspect of Celtic spirituality. So that's something that I plan to be studying a lot more as time goes on. And it's kind of like a, connection with some of my ancestors and with this, ancestral identity of just being Celtic in that way, because a lot of those traditions, stories, etc., only were carried over because of the Irish Catholic Church. So that concludes my sort of YouTube Pagan Challenge speed round for 13 through 16. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and blessed be.